Hello, I am Ron Baker, and welcome to another episode of Empowered at Last. When I began this podcast, I said that I wanted to talk about anything and everything, for this to be a safe place for us to explore every subject you can imagine. Well, today's subject is going to be a little unusual. Quite often my focus in the podcast is how you can set yourself up well. And today's subject certainly will help to set you up well. But we're going to shift the tables a little bit today and talk about how can you set others in your life up well. You do this, I hope, in small ways, in bigger ways. Let's get specific. You might help others well by making sure that all of the tasks need to be done in the house that are immediate for this week. You also want to plan ahead so that you set your family up well, preparing for events that are coming, such as vacations, or those unexpected surprises, or glitches with the house or the car. You want to set others in your life up well by the choices that you make. Longer term goals. You want to set others up well, such as your children, by planning for their college, starting to put a little away every month so that you set yourself and them up well. Well, all of that is an introduction, mostly to talk about setting others up well by planning all the way for the end of your life, because no one knows when that is going to take place. It is so dang important that we all start to take responsibility for setting others up well by preparing and having all of our ducks in a row for the end of our lives. Why do I feel inspired to share this particular topic today? Just in the last week, a dear friend of mine called to say that her husband had had a massive heart attack, completely unacceptable, and he ended up passing away. Completely surprising, completely shocking. And as sensitive as this subject is, while they're having to deal with the emotional shock and loss in their lives, they discovered that they had not been set up well at all. They had not discussed as a family how to prepare for the end of their lives as well. Unfortunately, the husband had even allowed his life insurance policies to lapse in the last year, thinking, oh, no big deal, I'm going to live a long, long time. I have heard this story, or variations of this story, so many times that today I'm going to help you. Even if you are a young person, you have people in your life who need to set themselves up well, or perhaps it's your parents that I'm talking about, and you need to be in a conversation so that they set themselves and you up well. So I've said it in as many variations as I can. We're ultimately needing to begin conversations so that we all set ourselves up well. So what do you need to have in place by the time something will happen in your life? I don't care if it's not going to happen for another 30, 40, 50 years. What needs to be in place includes a will so that your assets can go where you want them. Did you know that if you die without a will, that the state can end up taking over and ending up with your possessions, and they won't end up going where you'd like them? If there are not legal contracts making these things clear, then there's no clear direction. So have a will. It's as simple as either phoning a lawyer, or you can even go online. I just took 2 seconds to open creating an online will, and I came up with a number of sites. One happens to be called LegalZoom, and one happens to be called Law Depot. I'm not pushing for these sites. I'm not getting kickbacks from these sites. I merely want to point out how simple and easy it can be for you to create a will so that you take care of the people in your life. It will also give you peace to not have to worry about these things. I know from a ton of people who've entered midlife that those thoughts begin to circulate in your mind and they nag. Go ahead and take all that pressure away and create a will. I know that people tend to avoid any subjects that remind them that we will all leave the planet one day. Nobody wants to talk about death. All the while, death is a vital subject. It impacts us throughout our lives with the other people who are generations ahead of us, and sometimes with our contemporaries whose soul journeys only take them to a very young age before they transition into their next steps as souls. It is so important that we learn to talk about everything. It is fully safe to talk about death. As a matter of fact, I'll spend one episode just talking about the sacred experiences that I went through with my parents prior to their deaths, and the meaningful journeys that I spent with both of them leading up to their points of transitioning from the physical to continue their soul journeys. So, within this subject, you need to have a will. You also need to have what is called a living will. Prior to my mother being in the hospital for her last 8 days, I had never heard of a living will. I had never had a reason to. That's why I'm taking the time to do this podcast. A living will is a decision where you go through a series of questions that are quite specific. You can find out what they are from your lawyers, from any major hospital, and you can create a living will that says, if this happens, this is what I want you to do. So for instance, one of the main questions in a living will is, if your heart stops, do you want to be resuscitated, or do you sign what is called a DNR, do not resuscitate? Did you know that if you don't have a living will, they don't have a choice? Doctors have to, by law, do anything and everything in their power to restart your heart, and this can be, I don't know how to say it in a really tender way, it can be quite violent to the body, quite jarring to the body. It can break ribs, so many things can happen. I'm not here to inform what you should or shouldn't do. I just want to empower you to make an informed choice. Talk to the people in your family. Even if you believe you're going to be here for many more decades, talk to the people who matter to you. Tell them what you prefer. Let them know that when it's your time, you want or don't want to be resuscitated. You want or don't want to be on life support machines. You want or don't want to be buried versus cremated. These are all questions that we had to face in my family with my mother toward those last days when we would much rather have been focusing on just loving and nurturing and comforting one another. We ended up going through that process. Now, most people don't handle stress very well. We were fortunate that my family has learned to communicate with one another, and so we were able to go through the awkwardness of it with relative ease. However, I have watched the feelings that get triggered in a lot of families, just from my own clients, where the situations are not graceful, they are not pretty, and they are emotionally volatile. So if these pieces can be in place, you will save yourself a lot of stress. You will know how to honor and serve the person who is transitioning. You, if you're the one who has reached the time to leave, can be at peace that you've done everything in your power to set the people you love up well. These are profound gestures that we can all make. So whether you are doing it yourself for your own life, creating your own will and living will, making the people around you aware of what you prefer and what you want to happen. There are even decisions about whether you want to create organ donations. My mother had made those choices, and both of her eyes ended up going to two different people, giving both people the gift of sight. These are profound things that I would have had no way of knowing if my mother hadn't made it clear. So set yourself up well, set the people in your life up well, and if you don't know whether your parents and grandparents have done such a thing, gently approach them and find out. Do it in a way of caring about them. Mom or grandmom, I just wanted to talk about something that I hope doesn't occur for a long time. But I'd like to find out what you want to happen when it comes to be your time to transition from the planet. When we reach that sacred time, I want to honor you. I want to be clear about how to please you, how to make it as meaningful and comforting as possible. These are things that my family went through, and it makes a profound difference compared to what my friend who just lost her husband or her children who just lost their father are now having to face and go through to try and figure out and not even lose their house. Set yourself up well. Set others up well. Plan for as many things as you can throughout your life. That is this week's lesson, and that is the call to action. As always, I close with choose well. It applies so directly to this week. Choose well, live fully, and by all means, be good to you. Have a great week. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Before we close, I wanted to encourage a couple of things. Number one is to go to ronbaker.net. There you will find lots of clues for how you can deepen this conversation. You can also find a way to get the booklet, An Essential Guide to the 9 Nurturing Needs. This is going to be a core focus of how we're going to enhance the quality of your life from the inside out in all the episodes. So I encourage you to go there, to get an overview of those 9 nurturing experiences that we all seek more than any other thing in our lives. I also want you to get involved in the conversation here. I really would like to talk about the things that are important to you, the things that you're concerned about or excited about. We live in a wacky world that is changing constantly. We need to learn to connect to ourselves, to count on ourselves, and to count on one another. So please either get involved at ronbaker.net or in the Facebook page, which is Empowered at Last with Ron Baker. I look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to deepening this conversation about life. And I close as always, choose well, live fully, and by all means, be good to you. Have a great week.